Suppose you were offered a free ice cream cone. It feels like a pure gain, right? But in the world of microeconomics, nothing is truly free. Every single action we take carries a hidden price tag. This is the concept of opportunity cost. In the simplest terms, it is the value of the best alternative you give up when you make a choice. When you pick one path, you are simultaneously deciding not to take another. Economists call this the benefit foregone. These costs are often invisible and sometimes speculative, but their impact can be massive. Today, we will explore how recognizing these hidden prices can stop us from climbing the wrong mountain in our lives. Consider your typical morning. You decide to buy a luxury smoothie, or perhaps you spend your Friday evening at a club. These aren't just choices about flavors or music. They are decisions about how you spend your most limited currency, time. When you select one path, you are effectively paying for it with the hours you could have spent doing something else. Here is where the logic begins to sharpen. In professional economics, opportunity cost is used to determine if parties can benefit from trading. It isn't just about the price listed on a menu. It's about the value of the alternative you surrendered. For instance, if you spend an hour at the gym, the cost isn't just the monthly membership fee, but the 60 minutes of sleep or focused work you lost. We are essentially walking balance sheets, constantly calculating an invisible price tag on every single movement we make. But there is a larger, more dangerous kind of mistake. There is a specific $2.8 billion mistake that proves we aren't as rational as we think. We will see how national governments even forget how to calculate costs, and how that leads to a project that becomes a symbol of its own failure. To make this tangible, let's look at a scenario involving Bob and Ann, two people who produce two goods, bananas and fish. On paper, their productivity looks straightforward. Bob can either gather 10 bananas or catch 10 fish if he spends his entire day on one task. Ann, however, is a powerhouse of efficiency. She can either gather 10 bananas or catch 30 fish. Here is where we calculate the hidden price. For Bob to get one banana, he gives up the chance to catch exactly one fish. Therefore, Bob's opportunity cost of producing a banana is one fish. But Ann's situation is fundamentally different. Because she is so much more efficient at fishing, her opportunity cost of producing one banana is 3 fish. Since Ann's cost of gathering a banana is 3 times higher than Bob's, the math suggests a clear strategy. If Ann focuses exclusively on catching fish and Bob focuses on gathering bananas, they can trade their surpluses. By specializing in the tasks where their relative cost is lowest, both end up with more than they could ever achieve by trying to do everything themselves. Now, let's scale this up to high-stakes life decisions. When most people look at the cost of a university degree, they only see the tuition. But the true cost of college is far higher because it includes the income we could have earned by working instead of attending classes. Let's run the numbers on a hypothetical example. If tuition is $10,000 a year, and working full-time in a local restaurant would earn you $20,000 a year, you aren't just spending $10,000. The real cost of attending college in this case is $30,000 a year. The $10,000 in tuition plus the $20,000 in lost wages. Over a 4-year degree, the total trade-off is $120,000. This isn't a warning against education, but a lesson in understanding trade-offs. Higher education often leads to higher earnings. For example, jumping from a $20,000 service job to a $40,000 management role. The critical question is whether that future gain outweighs the immediate, invisible cost. Consider a high school student deciding between a medical degree and joining the family business. The medical path requires tuition and living expenses of $2,000 a month for 6 years. That is $144,000 total spent. That is roughly the price of a mid-sized luxury car. After that, the professional earns $10,000 a month, spending $3,000 on living expenses. Compare that to the alternative. Entering the family business immediately and earning $3,500 a month for the next 40 years. The math transforms a career choice into a lifetime balance sheet.
Now we encounter a psychological glitch. Imagine a mountain climber who has spent hours of grueling effort to reach a peak. They realize they are halfway up the wrong mountain on a path that leads nowhere. Logic says turn back, but they keep climbing. Why? Because they have already invested so much time and physical energy. They feel that to descend now would be to waste everything they have already put in. This is the sunk cost fallacy. It is a mental trap where we cling to a choice simply because we have already paid a price for it. Avoiding regret is one of the primary drivers of human behavior. We aren't just calculating future gains. We are terrified of the emotional sting of admitting we were wrong. It feels irrational, and it is. This fear of being wrong reveals itself even in the simplest games, proving that we aren't the rational calculators we think we are.
This irrationality isn't just a personal mistake, it's a scaled-up version of the same glitch. Let's look at the Concorde supersonic jet. The British and French governments spent an estimated $2.8 billion on its development. $2.8 billion is an amount that could have built hundreds of thousands of apartments for the rest of the population. But as the development progressed, it became clear that the Concorde would never be commercially viable. The planes were too loud, the sonic booms were banned in many countries, and the fuel consumption was astronomical. Despite these facts, the governments kept pouring money into the project. Why? Because they had already spent so much. They didn't want to admit that the $2.8 billion was gone. The project became a symbol of national pride, and the project's existence was more important than the project's utility. In economics, this is often called the Concorde Fallacy. Concorde was not a plane up in the sky. It was a fortress of sunk costs.
Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky believed that regret avoidance was the root of these behaviors. They eventually developed prospect theory and loss aversion, but their initial focus was on how the fear of making a specific kind of mistake dictates our actions. To understand this, consider a dice game experiment. Participants are asked to pick one of two identical cups. One contains a red die, the other a white die. If they pick the red one, they win $5. Mathematically, it is a 50-50 chance. Yet, approximately 90% of people refuse to switch their choice of cup, even when there is no logical reason to stay. Why? Because psychologically, the sting is worse if you switch your choice and are wrong than if you stick with your original choice and fail. The anxiety of what if is the one thing that outweighs the mathematical probability. But watch what happens when we increase the stakes. When the reward for switching and winning is tripled to $15, 50% of people finally switch. It takes a reward 10 times the original value to get 90% of the group to change their minds. This proves the sheer strength of regret. We aren't calculating odds, we are calculating the potential for self-blame. This is the part that bothers me about our instincts. Why do we cling to a choice once it is made? The answer lies in the endowment effect. This psychological mechanism suggests that once we perceive ownership of something, it becomes more valuable to us than an identical item we do not own. In the dice game, the simple act of selecting a cup makes it ours. This is where it gets interesting. This increases its perceived value. Researchers found that this feeling is even stronger when a physical move occurs. If the selected cup is moved into the participant's personal space, the participant's brain's sense of ownership is amplified. By simply shifting the cup a few inches closer, the choice stops being a mathematical probability and starts feeling like a piece of property. We aren't just picking a cup, we are defending our territory. Our brains are wired for a specific kind of asymmetry called loss aversion. This makes the emotional hit of a loss feel roughly 3 times as intense as the joy of an equivalent gain. If you lose $100, the psychological blow is significantly harder than the pleasure of finding $100.
This consistent pattern is why the bygones principle suggests we should ignore the past to remain rational. If the money or the time is already gone, it is a sunk cost. To be truly rational, we must consciously fight the urge to cling to a failing project or a ruined investment. We have to realize that the agony of admitting a loss is often 3 times more powerful than the logic of moving toward a better alternative. But here is the tension. Can we actually delete the past from our decisions? The mathematical brain knows the money's gone, but the emotional brain feels the loss. We're caught between a balance sheet and a feeling. We struggle to admit that the time we spent on a wrong path is a cost we have already paid. The question is whether we can actually train our brains to ignore the same things that our spreadsheets are telling us. Whether it is the $120,000 hidden cost of a degree, the $2.8 billion mistake of the Concorde, and the thousands of hours spent climbing the wrong mountain, the lesson is the same. The most expensive things in life are often the ones we don't see on the price tag. We are not just choosing between options. We are choosing which alternative we are willing to kill. The real danger isn't making a mistake. It's the refusal to stop paying for that mistake once it's already happened. If we can learn to apply the bygones principle and detach our identity from our past choices, we stop being prisoners of our previous selves. The question then becomes, if you looked at your life as a balance sheet today, which wrong mountain are you still climbing simply because you've already spent so much time on the way up?